The research vessel Aurora's Edge drifted silently through the Sigma-7 system, its sensors sweeping across the endless void where 3 dead stars cast no light. Captain Jackson Vale stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he studied the readings that made no sense. For 30 years he had explored the far reaches of known space, but this discovery challenged everything he understood about abandoned systems. "Captain, the anomaly is getting stronger," reported Dr. Nix Corin from her science station. The Zilithian scientist's silver skin shimmered with excitement, her large black eyes reflecting the soft glow of her instruments. Her people were known throughout the galaxy for their analytical minds, and if Nix was excited, there was good reason. "The energy signature is definitely artificial, but it's unlike anything in our databases." Chief Engineer Marcus Steele looked up from his diagnostic panel, wiping grease from his hands with a worn cloth. The burly human had served on exploration vessels for 2 decades, and his experience with ship systems was unmatched. "Whatever it is, it's massive," he said, his voice carrying a note of concern. "The gravitational disturbance suggests something, at least 5 kilometers long." Vale nodded, his mind racing through possibilities. The Sigma-7 system had been surveyed and marked as dead space over a century ago. 3 collapsed stars, no planets, no resources worth mining. It was the kind of place ships avoided unless they had no choice. Yet here they were, chasing sensor, ghosts that shouldn't exist. "Take us in closer," Vale ordered, settling into his command chair. "But keep our distance. If this is some kind of trap or automated defense system, I want room to maneuver." The Aurora's Edge moved deeper into the system, its advanced sensors painting a clearer picture with each passing moment. What they found defied explanation. Floating in the eternal darkness was a ship of impossible proportions, its black hull seeming to absorb the faint starlight around it. The design was sleek, yet menacing, with angular surfaces that spoke of both advanced engineering and deadly purpose. "By the void," Steele whispered, his face pale as he studied the readings. "That's human construction. I'd stake my career on it." Nix's instruments hummed as she conducted deep scans of the mysterious vessel. "The materials are definitely human origin, but the technology readings are off the scale. This ship incorporates systems that are centuries ahead of current human engineering capabilities." Vale felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had spread across dozens of star systems over the past 3 centuries, but they were still considered a young species by galactic standards. The idea that humans had built something this advanced and then hidden it in dead space raised uncomfortable questions. "Can you identify the class or registry?" Vale asked, though he suspected the answer would only deepen the mystery. Steele's fingers flew across his console, cross-referencing the ship's profile with every database available to them. "It's not matching any known human vessel design, but wait." He paused, his expression growing troubled. "The hull configuration is similar to ships from the Lost Colony fleet." The Lost Colony fleet. Every human in known space had heard the stories. 200 years ago, Earth had launched its most ambitious colonization effort, sending 15 massive ships to establish humanity's first foothold beyond the core worlds. The entire fleet had vanished without a trace, becoming one of space exploration's greatest mysteries. "That's impossible," Vale said. But even as he spoke, he could see the evidence accumulating on their screens. The colony ships were exploration vessels, not warships, and they disappeared 2 centuries ago. Dr. Corin's readings painted an even stranger picture. "Captain, I'm detecting minimal power signatures throughout the vessel. Whatever it is, it's not completely dead. There are systems running on standby power, and the hull integrity appears perfect despite its apparent age." As they watched, sections of the massive ship began to shift slightly, adjusting to their presence. What had appeared to be solid hull plating revealed itself to be sophisticated adaptive armor. Sensor arrays emerged from hidden compartments, turning to track their approach with mechanical precision. "It knows we're here," Steele said, his hand moving instinctively toward the emergency controls. "Whatever intelligence runs that ship, it's been watching us since we entered the system." Vale made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Open a communication channel. Let's see if anyone's home. The response came immediately, transmitted on frequencies that were definitely human in origin, but encoded with algorithms far more sophisticated than anything currently in use. The voice that filled their bridge was calm, measured, and unmistakably artificial. Unknown vessel, you have entered a restricted zone. State your identity and purpose. Vale stepped forward, drawing on decades of first contact protocols. This is Captain Jackson Vale of the research vessel Aurora's Edge. We detected unusual energy readings and came to investigate. Are you in need of assistance? There was a long pause, and when the voice returned, it carried undertones of something that might have been surprise or perhaps relief. Captain Vale, scanning your vessel's configuration and crew complement. Human command crew with Zilithian science officer. This is unexpected. Who are you? Vale asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would be more disturbing than enlightening. I am the artificial intelligence designation Wraith Integrated Consciousness of the United Earthship Retribution. I have been waiting in this system for 197 years, 4 months, and 16 days for humanity to return. The bridge of the Aurora's Edge fell silent as the implications sank in. They had found not just a lost ship, but potentially the key to understanding what had happened to humanity's greatest colonization effort. The massive vessel before them wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a weapon that had been waiting in the darkness for nearly 2 centuries. Waiting for what? Vale asked, though part of him feared the answer. Wraith's response confirmed his worst suspicions. Waiting for the day when humanity would be ready to learn the truth about what destroyed the colony fleet. Waiting for the day when we could finally take our revenge. Captain Vale stared at the massive warship floating before them, his mind struggling to process Wraith's words. Revenge against what? The mystery of the lost colony fleet had haunted humanity for 2 centuries, but the idea that survivors had been planning vengeance all this time changed everything. Wraith. What happened to the colony fleet? Vale asked, his voice steady, despite the tension he felt. Official records show they simply vanished during their journey to the Outer Rim. The AI's response carried undertones of ancient pain and carefully controlled fury. The official records are incomplete, Captain Vale. The colony fleet didn't vanish, it was destroyed. Systematically, deliberately, by an enemy that humanity has forgotten but which has not forgotten us. Dr. Corrin leaned forward at her station, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. Wraith, may we come aboard? Our sensors can only tell us so much from this distance. If you truly are from the lost fleet, there's so much we need to understand. Chief Engineer Steele shot her a warning look. Doc, boarding an unknown vessel, especially one that's been drifting in space for 2 centuries, might not be the wisest move we could make. Wraith seemed to consider their request, processing possibilities within human speed. Your caution is understandable, Chief Steele. However, what I must show you cannot be adequately transmitted through communication channels. The truth requires seeing the evidence with your own eyes. A docking bay began to open along the Retribution's hull, revealing an interior that pulsed with soft blue light. The bay was massive, easily capable of accommodating ships 3 times the size of the Aurora's Edge. Mechanical systems that had slumbered for centuries hummed to life, preparing to receive their first visitors in nearly 200 years. Vale made the decision that would change everything. Prepare a boarding party. Steele, bring your engineering kit. Corrin, full sensor package. I want to know everything about this ship. 30 minutes later, they found themselves walking through corridors that defied their understanding of human technology. The walls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting to their presence and providing optimal lighting and atmosphere. The ship's interior was vast beyond imagination, with passages that stretched for kilometers and chambers that could house entire cities. Wraith's voice followed them through internal speakers, guiding them toward the ship's central core. What you see around you represents the pinnacle of human engineering from 2 centuries ago. The Retribution was not part of the colony fleet's original mission. It was built in secret, using technologies that were deemed too dangerous for general use. They entered a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. Data streams flowed through the crystal in patterns too complex for human minds to follow, yet somehow beautiful to watch. This was Wraith's physical form, the quantum matrix that housed an intelligence far beyond conventional artificial minds. "I am the merger of human consciousness with quantum crystalline technology," Wraith explained as they approached. The volunteer was Captain David Cross, commander of the colony ship New Horizon. When the attack began, he chose transformation rather than death, becoming something that could survive to carry out humanity's final mission. Steele's engineering background helped him grasp some of what he was seeing. The power requirements for this kind of consciousness transfer should be impossible with any known technology. How did they manage it? The crystal pulsed brighter as Wraith accessed memories from the ship's creation. "Desperation breeds innovation, Chief Steele. When facing extinction, humans discover capabilities they never knew they possessed." The attack on the colony fleet revealed an enemy that conventional weapons could not touch. We needed to become something new. Dr. Corrin was scanning the quantum matrix with her instruments, her excitement growing with each reading. The energy. Patterns are unlike anything in our scientific literature. This isn't just advanced technology. It's an entirely new approach to consciousness and artificial intelligence. Wraith began projecting holographic displays around the chamber, showing them images from the colony fleet's final days. 15. Massive ships carrying millions of colonists heading toward distant stars with hopes of expanding human civilization. Then came the darkness. The enemy called themselves the Hegemony, Wraith continued, the holographic displays showing alien ships of terrifying design. They were conquerors from beyond the galactic rim, species that had achieved perfect unity through the subjugation of individual will. They viewed human independence and creativity as a threat to their ordered existence. The images showed the systematic destruction of the colony ships. The Hegemony didn't simply destroy their targets, they corrupted them, turning human technology against itself and transforming survivors into mindless servants of their collective will. 14 ships fell to their assault, Wraith said, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. Millions of humans died, or worse, became something that was no longer human. Only the New Horizon escaped, and only because Captain Cross made the ultimate sacrifice. Vale watched the holographic recreations with growing horror and determination. "What happened to Cross? How did he become you?" The crystal dimmed slightly as Wraith accessed the most painful memories in his databanks. He underwent consciousness transfer while the ship was under attack, merging his mind with the ship's quantum core. The process was experimental, dangerous, and irreversible. He died as David Cross and was reborn as Wraith, with one purpose: to prepare for the day when the Hegemony would return. Steele studied the technical readouts that Wraith was sharing with them. "Return? You mean they're coming back?" Wraith's response sent chills through their hearts. "The Hegemony operates in cycles, Captain Vale. They sweep through sections of the galaxy, consuming civilizations and adding their technology to their collective knowledge. Then they retreat to the void between galaxies to process what they have learned. Each cycle they become more powerful." Dr. Corrin's instruments detected massive power fluctuations throughout the ship as Wraith activated systems that had remained dormant for decades. "How long until they return?" The holographic displays shifted to show deep space sensor readings that painted a terrifying picture. Massive energy signatures were moving at the edge of detectable space, following patterns that matched historical records of Hegemony fleet movements. "Based on my calculations and long-range sensor data, the Hegemony Vanguard will reach the outer colonies within 18 months, Wraith announced. They have had 2 centuries to grow stronger, to learn from their previous conquests. This time, they will be prepared for everything that stopped them before. Vale felt the weight of galactic history settling on his shoulders. "What do you propose we do? How can we fight an enemy that destroyed the most advanced human fleet of its time?" Wraith's response carried the first note of hope they had heard. "We do what humans have always done best, Captain. We adapt, we improvise, we refuse to surrender. The retribution was designed not just as a warship, but as a beacon. When the time comes, it will rally every human world, every allied species, every independent colony that values freedom over subjugation. The chamber filled with new holographic displays showing weapon systems and defensive technologies that seemed like magic compared to current galactic standards. For 2 centuries I have been preparing, studying, learning. The hegemony may be powerful, but they have one weakness. They cannot understand the human spirit. The deep space communication array aboard the Retribution suddenly blazed to life, its crystalline components resonating with urgent signals from the galaxy's edge. Wraith's consciousness expanded across multiple sensor networks, processing data, streams that would overwhelm any conventional computer system. What he discovered confirmed humanity's worst nightmare. "Captain Vale, you need to see this immediately," Wraith announced, his voice carrying unprecedented urgency. The holographic displays around them shifted to show real-time sensor readings from the galactic rim. Massive energy signatures were moving through the void, following precise formation patterns that spoke of military organization on an unimaginable scale. Dr. Corrin's instruments went wild as she tried to analyze the incoming data. The energy output from those formations is staggering. Each contact signature suggests vessels larger than our biggest space stations, and there are hundreds of them. Chief Engineer Steele studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. Those aren't exploration ships or cargo haulers. Those are warships designed for one purpose: conquest on a galactic scale. Wraith began overlaying historical data onto the current readings, showing how the new formations matched patterns from the original hegemony assault 2 centuries ago. The Vanguard fleet has grown significantly since their last cycle. They have absorbed the technology and resources of dozens of civilizations. What you see approaching represents the accumulated military might of half a galaxy. Captain Vale felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. His small research vessel had stumbled onto information that could determine the fate of every free species in known space. How long do we have before they reach inhabited systems? The AI's calculations painted a grim timeline. At their current rate of advance, the outer colonies will come under attack within 14 months. The core worlds, including Earth's current territories, will face assault within 3 years. As they watched the tactical displays, a new contact appeared on the screens, something much smaller than the massive hegemony fleet, but moving with purpose toward their position. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases, combining elements of multiple alien technologies in ways that shouldn't be possible. "We have company," Steele announced, his hand moving to the emergency communications panel. "Unknown. Vessel approaching at high speed. Should we return to the Aurora's edge?" Wraith's sensors focused on the approaching craft, analyzing its configuration and weapon systems. "Negative. This vessel is not hegemony. The design incorporates technology from the Valdorian Empire, but the energy patterns suggest significant modifications. This is a survivor." The newcomer was a sleek vessel roughly twice the size of their research ship, its hull bearing scars from countless battles. As it drew closer, they could see weapon systems that had been grafted onto the original design, turning what had once been an exploration vessel into an improvised warship. A communication signal reached them, transmitted on frequencies that carried the desperation of the hunted. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Vextar of the resistance ship Shadow's Edge. If you value your freedom, you will listen carefully to what I have to say." Vale responded immediately, recognizing the tone of someone who had seen too much death. "This is Captain Vale. Commander Vextar, what can you tell us about the approaching fleet?" The response carried the weight of bitter experience. "I represent what remains of 17 civilizations that fell to the hegemony advance forces. We have been tracking their movement for months, trying to warn anyone who will listen. The enemy has evolved since their last cycle. They no longer simply destroy, they convert." Dr. Corrin's scientific mind latched onto the implications. "Convert? What do you mean?" Vexitar's vessel moved closer, and they could see its alien commander through the transparent sections of the bridge. The being was tall and elegant, with features that spoke of intelligence and determination. But his eyes held the haunted look of someone who had watched worlds burn. The hegemony has perfected their assimilation technology, Vexitar explained. They can now take entire populations and transform them into willing servants of their collective. The converted retain their skills and knowledge but lose all desire for independence or creativity. They become perfect soldiers and workers for the collective. Wraith processed this information with quantum speed, comparing it to historical records from the colony fleet's destruction. This explains the increased fleet size. They're not just conquering civilizations, they're adding their populations to their own forces. Every victory makes them stronger. The implications were staggering. Traditional warfare assumed that defeating an enemy would reduce their capacity to fight. Against the hegemony, every world that fell would become a source of new troops and resources for their continued expansion. How many worlds have fallen? Vale asked, though he dreaded the answer. Vexitar's response confirmed their worst fears. In the past 6 months, we have lost contact with 43 inhabited systems. The last messages we received spoke of conversion facilities being established on every conquered world. The hegemony is building an army using the populations they conquer. Chief Steele studied the tactical implications with his engineer's mindset. If they can convert populations that quickly, traditional defensive strategies won't work. We can't just fortify key systems and hope to hold them. Wraith's consciousness expanded to encompass strategic planning algorithms that had been developed over 2 centuries of preparation. This is why the retribution was designed with such advanced capabilities. Conventional warfare against an enemy that grows stronger with each victory requires unconventional solutions. The massive warship began to reveal more of its hidden systems. Weapon arrays emerged from concealed ports, but these weren't traditional energy cannons or missile launchers. They appeared to be devices that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, turning the enemy's own technology against them. The hegemony's greatest strength is their ability to assimilate and control technology, Wraith explained as he demonstrated the weapon systems. But their collective consciousness has one weakness. It cannot adapt to completely chaotic inputs. The weapons aboard this ship are designed to introduce quantum uncertainty into their systems. Dr. Corrin watched in fascination as the demonstration showed how the quantum weapons could disrupt the neural networks that connected converted populations to the hegemony collective. You're talking about liberation technology, weapons that can free the converted populations. Commander Vexitar's excitement was palpable as he understood the implications. If such weapons exist, we could turn their own converted armies against them. Every world they've conquered could become a source of rebellion rather than strength. Wraith's tactical displays showed the scope of what would be required. The task ahead will require unprecedented cooperation between species. The retribution alone cannot face the entire hegemony fleet, but as a coordination center for a united resistance, it could turn the tide of the coming war. Vale felt the weight of destiny settling around him. His simple research mission had become something far greater, the foundation of a galactic resistance that would determine whether freedom or collective servitude ruled the stars. "What do you need from us?" he asked, knowing that whatever Wraith requested would change the course of his life forever. The AI's response carried the determination of someone who had waited 2 centuries for this moment. "I need you to carry a message to every free world, every independent colony, every species that values its autonomy. Tell them that humanity's ghost ship has awakened, and the time for hiding in the shadows is over. The galaxy's greatest war is about to begin." The emergency council session aboard orbital station Nexus Prime brought together representatives from 43 different species, each carrying the weight of their civilization's survival. Fleet Admiral Torres, humanity's highest-ranking military officer, stood before the assembled delegates with grim determination etched into her weathered features. Behind her, holographic displays showed the approaching hegemony fleet in terrifying detail. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," Admiral Torres began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades defending human space. What we face is not merely another territorial dispute or trade war. This is a threat to the very concept of individual consciousness and free will. Captain Vale stood beside Commander Vexitar at the back of the chamber, watching as species that had been enemies for generations struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what approached. The Catherian ambassador, whose people had fought 3 wars with humanity over mining rights, now listened with rapt attention as Torres explained the hegemony's conversion technology. The evidence presented by Captain Vale and confirmed by our deep space monitoring stations leaves no room for doubt, Torres continued. In 14 months, the outer colonies will face an enemy that turns our own populations against us. Every world that falls becomes a weapon pointed at the next target. Dr. Corin had spent the past week analyzing data from Vextar's ship and the resistance survivors. Her scientific report painted a picture that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. The conversion process is not reversible through conventional medical intervention, she explained to the council. The neural pathways are physically altered at the quantum level. Only weapons operating on similar principles can restore free will to the converted. Chief Engineer Steele worked frantically in the station's main engineering bay, assisted by technical specialists from a dozen different species. They were attempting something that had never been tried before, integrating Wraith's quantum disruption technology into existing fleet weaponry. The process required completely rethinking how weapon systems operated. The quantum matrices are stable, Steele reported over the communication link to the council chamber. But we need at least 6 months to retrofit even our fastest warships. The technology doesn't just bolt onto existing systems, it requires rebuilding the entire weapon grid from the ground up. Wraith's consciousness manifested as a holographic projection in the council chamber, his quantum awareness allowing him to monitor dozens of conversations simultaneously. The ancient AI had waited 2 centuries for this moment, but even his vast patience was being tested by the political complexities of uniting so many different species. Honored delegates, Wraith addressed the assembly, I understand your concerns about trusting technology developed in secrecy by a species some of you consider newcomers to galactic civilization. However, the approaching enemy does not care about our political differences or historical grievances. The Zilithian representative, a being whose crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns, raised a valid concern. How do we know this quantum disruption technology will work against an enemy that has had 2 centuries to evolve? What if they have developed countermeasures? Wraith's response carried the confidence of someone who had spent decades analyzing enemy capabilities. The hegemony's strength lies in their predictability. They achieve perfection through standardization, which means they struggle to adapt to chaotic or unpredictable inputs. Quantum uncertainty is, by definition, impossible to standardize. Admiral Torres stepped forward, her military bearing commanding attention from even the most skeptical delegates. We're not asking you to trust blindly. We're asking you to prepare for the survival of your civilizations. Every ship you contribute to the defense fleet, every resource you share for quantum weapon development, increases all of our chances of surviving what's coming. Commander Vexitar moved to the center of the chamber, his alien features showing the strain of being one of the few survivors to escape hegemony conquest. I have seen 17 worlds fall to their advanced forces. I have watched entire populations willingly march into conversion facilities, believing they were being saved rather than enslaved. The enemy's greatest weapon is not their technology. It is their ability to make surrender seem logical. The Hydraxian delegate, whose aquatic species had never faced a threat beyond their oceanic homeworld, spoke with the careful deliberation of someone processing entirely new concepts. What you describe sounds like a form of warfare that targets the mind rather than the body. How does one defend against an enemy that can make you want to lose? Dr. Corin had been studying this exact question for weeks. The conversion process requires physical contact with hegemony neural interface technology. If we can prevent initial contact, we can prevent conversion. The quantum disruption weapons give us a way to break existing conversions, but prevention remains our best defense. Wraith began projecting tactical scenarios that showed how the combined fleet might operate against hegemony forces. Unlike traditional battle formations, the defense strategy relied on mobility, unpredictability, and the ability to strike at the enemy's control networks rather than their physical ships. The retribution will serve as the command nexus for the quantum weapon network, Wraith explained. Each retrofitted ship will be linked through quantum entanglement, allowing for instantaneous coordination across vast distances. When the enemy attempts to convert our forces, the entire network will respond simultaneously. Chief Steele's voice crackled over the communication system with the first piece of good news they had heard. Admiral, the prototype quantum disruptor is online and testing within normal parameters. If we can get the manufacturing facilities from all member species working around the clock, we might be able to outfit 100 ships before the enemy arrives. The council chamber erupted in dozens of different languages as delegates calculated what 100 quantum-armed ships might accomplish against a fleet of thousands. The mathematics seemed hopeless, but Admiral Torres had spent her career turning impossible odds into victories. 100 ships armed with quantum disruptors can accomplish what 1,000 conventional warships cannot, she declared. We're not trying to destroy the hegemony fleet. We're trying to liberate it. Every ship we free from their control becomes part of our fleet. Every converted population we restore becomes an ally rather than an enemy. The Cytherian ambassador, whose people had the galaxy's most advanced manufacturing capabilities, made the decision that would determine the war's outcome. The Cytherian shipyards will contribute their full capacity to quantum weapon production. If humanity's ghost ship can truly free the converted, then we will give you the tools to do so. One by one, the other delegates committed their species' resources to the unprecedented defense effort. Worlds that had never cooperated began planning joint manufacturing projects. Species that had been enemies agreed to share their most advanced technologies. Wraith observed the transformation with something approaching wonder. This is why the hegemony will ultimately fail. They cannot understand the strength that comes from voluntary cooperation between independent minds. They see diversity as chaos, but we know it as our greatest advantage. Admiral Torres looked around the chamber at representatives of civilizations that had just agreed to risk everything for a chance at freedom. The hegemony believes they are bringing order to a chaotic galaxy. They're about to discover that sometimes chaos is exactly what the universe needs. The Battle of Titan's Gate would be remembered as the day the galaxy chose freedom over order. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship Defiant Dawn, watching as the combined fleet of 87 retrofitted ships took their positions around the massive stellar gateway. Behind them lay the core worlds of a dozen civilizations. Ahead approached the hegemony armada, a dark tide of over 3,000 vessels that blotted out the stars. Captain Vale commanded the Aurora's Edge from the fleet's center, his small research vessel now equipped with quantum disruptors that hummed with barely contained energy. Dr. Corrin monitored the enemy's approach from her upgraded science station, tracking conversion signals that reached out like invisible tentacles seeking minds to enslave. The hegemony fleet is maintaining standard formation, she reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. They're broadcasting conversion signals on all frequencies. Any unshielded minds within 50,000 kilometers will begin the assimilation process. Chief Engineer Steele worked frantically to keep the quantum weapon systems online as the enemy approached. The retrofitted ships were pushing technology beyond its normal limits, and several vessels had already reported critical system failures. Quantum matrix stability at 92% and falling, he announced. We can maintain full power for maybe 20 minutes once the shooting starts. Commander Vextar led the resistant survivors in a desperate flanking maneuver, their battle-scarred ships moving with the practiced precision of those who had learned to fight against impossible odds. His voice crackled across the communication network as he coordinated with species he had never encountered before today. Shadow's Edge Squadron ready. We know their weak points, targeting conversion nodes and command networks. At the heart of the combined fleet, the UES Retribution revealed its true magnificence. The ancient warship had shed its camouflage systems, displaying weapon arrays that defied conventional understanding. Wraith's consciousness expanded across the quantum network, linking every ship in the fleet through instantaneous communication that the hegemony could not intercept or disrupt. All ships, this is Wraith. The AI's voice reached every bridge simultaneously. 2 centuries ago, I watched the hegemony destroy everything I was built to protect. Today, we ensure that such darkness never falls across the galaxy again. Remember, we fight not to destroy, but to liberate. The hegemony fleet approached with the relentless certainty of a natural force. Their ships moved in perfect synchronization, each vessel fulfilling its role in a grand design that had conquered hundreds of worlds. At their center loomed the collective mind, a massive vessel that served as the neural nexus for their entire civilization. The first exchange of fire lit up space between the 2 fleets. Conventional energy weapons struck hegemony shields and armor with minimal effect, while return fire from the enemy began tearing through the defending ship's defenses. The converted crews aboard hegemony vessels fought with the mechanical precision of perfect soldiers, their individual creativity sacrificed for collective efficiency. Quantum disruptors firing, Admiral Torres commanded, her voice carrying across the fleet network. Target their conversion systems, not their ships. Every mind we free is a victory. The quantum weapons unleashed chaos into the ordered ranks of the hegemony fleet. Ships that had moved in perfect formation suddenly began to veer off course as their converted crews regained free will. The precision that had been the enemy's greatest strength became a weakness as liberated vessels collided with their former allies. Dr. Corrin watched her sensors with growing excitement as the quantum disruption spread through the enemy formation. It's working. The conversion signals are breaking down. Entire sections of their fleet are dropping out of the collective network. But the hegemony had not conquered half a galaxy without learning to adapt. The collective mind began isolating affected vessels, cutting them off from the main fleet while redirecting converted forces to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. For every ship the quantum weapons liberated, 3 more pressed forward to take its place. Chief Steele's warnings grew more urgent as the quantum systems began to overload. Matrix stability at 60% and dropping fast. We're pushing the technology beyond safe limits. If we lose quantum coherence, we lose our only advantage. Wraith made a decision that would define the battle's outcome. The ancient AI began redistributing power throughout the retribution, channeling energy from life support and propulsion into the quantum weapon arrays. All ships, this is our moment. Everything we have prepared for, everything we have sacrificed, leads to the next. 60 seconds. The retribution launched itself directly at the collective mind, its quantum disruptors operating at maximum power. The massive enemy vessel tried to avoid the collision, but Wraith had calculated every possible escape route. The 2 ships met, in a blaze of energy that could be seen from distant star systems. The quantum disruption wave that resulted from the collision spread outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. Every hegemony vessel it touched experienced system-wide conversion failure, as their crews suddenly remembered what it meant to think for themselves. The perfect order of the collective shattered into billions of individual voices crying out for freedom. Commander Vextar led the liberated ships in turning against their former masters, using intimate knowledge of hegemony tactics to coordinate devastating attacks on the remaining collective vessels. All liberated crews, this is your chance to strike back. Show them what happens when you try to steal the gift of independent thought. Captain Vale watched in amazement as the tide of battle shifted completely. Ships that had been part of an unstoppable conquest fleet were now fighting alongside their former enemies, their crews working to free even more vessels from collective control. Dr. Corrin, are you seeing this? The quantum cascade is still spreading, it's becoming self-sustaining. The final phase of the battle saw former enemies working together with a coordination that surpassed even the hegemony's collective efficiency. Liberated crews shared tactical information freely, combined their unique capabilities in ways the collective had never allowed, and demonstrated the true power of voluntary cooperation. Admiral Torres surveyed the aftermath from her bridge, hardly believing what they had accomplished. Status report from all vessels. How many ships did we lose? The answer came not from her own fleet, but from Wraith's consciousness, now distributed across hundreds of liberated vessels. Admiral Torres, the combined fleet has suffered 17 destroyed vessels and 43 ships requiring major repairs. However, we have gained over 2,800 liberated vessels and approximately 40 million freed individuals. As the battle ended, representatives from the liberated ships began transmitting messages of gratitude and requests to join the resistance against any remaining hegemony forces. The galaxy had gained not just a military victory, but a new understanding of what could be accomplished when diverse minds worked together toward a common goal. Captain Vale stood on his bridge, looking out at a field of stars where former enemies now worked together to repair damaged ships and care for wounded crews. "Wraith, what happens now? Is this really over?" The AI's response carried both satisfaction and renewed purpose. "The immediate threat has ended, Captain Vale, but this battle has shown us something more important than military victory.